What would it look like to offer care to others without abandoning yourself and practice establishing boundaries proactively to keep a healthy balance? The longest days of the year are here. The light is at its peak, and the sun appears to stand still in the sky. Cancer season pulls us inward emotionally. Mercury is about to go retrograde in Cancer on the same day. The Capricorn Full Moon delivers a dose of strategy, practicality, accountability, and maybe a few financial blessings. What is up, my witches? Welcome to the Queer Soul Alchemy podcast, a supportive community helping queer folks to embrace their authentic selves by exploring yoga, astrology, and spirituality. I'm your host, Lee Davey. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host and favorite queer envy priestess, Lee Davey, your spiritual alchemy doula, your bisexual degenerate, your dad on vacation if your dad was a pagan astrophile. In this episode, we're unpacking the astrology of the upcoming Mercury retrograde in the sign of Cancer, the Capricorn full moon, and the deeper medicine of the Cancer-Capricorn axis. Keep listening to understand what is meant by the sacred balance between our inner masculine and inner feminine, because we see this basic psychological concept represented again and again in spiritual and esoteric frameworks across time and history. And some queer folks feel that this only further perpetuates the binary. But first, new episodes of this podcast drop every Wednesday, posted to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please make an offering to the algorithm gods by leaving the show a like, a comment, and a 5-star review. If you really want to please the gods, comment the name of your favorite pop diva or queer icon. And please subscribe. It really helps our fellow queer spiritual seekers find this magic. And don't miss out on exclusive access to my free self-care resource guide, which I have specifically curated for you to support your journey with spirituality. To download this guide and be the first to know about upcoming queer yoga retreats and events, please sign up for our email newsletter at youareloved.one/pod. All right, y'all, let's get into it. Is Mercury in the microwave again? So Mercury is not in the microwave just yet, but we're definitely in a pre-retrograde shadow period right now. You may have noticed some miscommunications and technical difficulties over the past week. I certainly have. Mercury goes retrograde in the sign of Cancer on Monday, June 30th, so very soon, and it will be retrograde for most of July. We won't be on the other side of this post-retrograde shadow period until mid-August or so. And just as a reminder, you guys, we already had one Mercury retrograde at the start of this year in the sign of Pisces. And all of the Mercury retrogrades this year are highlighting all the 3 water signs. First Pisces, now Cancer, and then we'll have Scorpio Mercury retrograde later on this year. So if you have a lot of water energy in your chart, this has been and likely will continue to be very much a year of refining your process and learning deep lessons, deep spiritual lessons, and closing out cycles of growth and learning in the areas of your life that are ruled by those 3 houses in your chart. So the houses that are ruled by Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. And now would be an excellent time, you guys, to go back to the episode that I put out right at the start of 2026 during Capricorn season, when the year kicked off with a Cancer full moon. Now we're at the summer solstice, the halfway point of the year, and the sun is in Cancer, and we're preparing for a Capricorn full moon. What cycle started in your life at the beginning of this year with that Cancer full moon that is now coming to some sort of climax, maximum expression, or really bearing fruit? What seed was planted in Capricorn season right at the start of this year that is starting to really bear fruit now? This July, and Mercury retrograde in Cancer brings a potent opportunity to refine and improve any lessons in these areas of our life and learn how to work with this emotional energy so that we can understand ourselves and others more deeply. So we just passed Litha, you guys, the summer solstice on June 21st, when the sun also moved into Cancer. Cancer season begins on June 21st, also known as the first day of summer, also known as the summer solstice, and continues through July 21st. Ruled by the moon, this body that governs tides and cycles, including the subtle rhythm of our emotional world, Cancer also rules the 4th house of home, family, and land ownership. The archetypes of Cancer energy are the crab and the mother. At its highest vibration, Cancer is emotional intelligence, intuition, care, and profound empathy. Cancer is deeply intuitive and emotionally honest. Its sensitivity with an ocean of depth. On the surface, Cancer energy feels playful and warm, but spend enough time there and you may find yourself confessing your whole life story. That's right, people tend to open up more easily around Cancer placements. And a healthy Cancer creates safety, protects, and nurtures just like a good mother would. However, like the crab's sharp claws protect its vulnerable insides, Cancer can use their emotional intelligence for self defense in a way that is harmful to others. The unhealthy Cancer may have learned throughout their lives that their emotions are not acceptable. So they may have learned to bottle their emotions up until they explode in anger, or they may be in a chronic state of emotional tenseness and moodiness. You see, water holds memory. Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is closely linked to the ocean and the tides. And Cancer can be very forgiving, yet rarely forgets an emotional experience. Cancer energy feels and absorbs everything. Personal, ancestral, even collective grief. Cancers tend to be highly empathetic. And at a high vibration, this profound emotional intelligence and healing capacity is wonderful. But at a low vibration, this moodiness, projection, quiet resentment can be equally harmful, right? As the cardinal water sign, Cancer is a natural leader who ideally leads through examples of deep care and empathy. Often they must learn healthy boundaries as a core lesson in their lifetime. A Cancer without boundaries can resort to passive aggressive or emotionally manipulative, even emotionally abusive behavior, and they instinctively take on emotional labor. This may be because they may have been conditioned from a young age that their worth and value depends on them doing this. So they may be doing it from a place of obligation, and the obligation and feeling of resentment is what can then become very toxic, right? So if this pattern is left unchecked and is unconsciously being repeated, then a Cancer's toxic trait can be overgiving, especially from an empty cup and not taking care of themselves. So empathy can, in a sense, become toxic when it leads to burnout and codependency. Cancer can unconsciously create one-sided codependent dynamics and then feel abandoned within them. And again, this pattern can lead to a lot of resentment and a lot of suffering. And the pattern isn't martyrdom necessarily, it's actually more of a fear of not being needed. Paradoxically, while Cancer nurtures everyone else, they may struggle to be vulnerable themselves. They fear that their softness will be used against them, so they armor up and say, I'm fine, even when they're not, in order to give the illusion that they have control. Unhealed Cancer energy can, again, unconsciously derive self worth from attempting to fix or save others, particularly those who aren't really ready for change. Because Cancer is the mother archetype of the zodiac, Cancer natives are more prone to being parentified. Any zodiac sign could, of course, become parentified, but in my opinion, Cancer and Capricorn are the zodiac signs most likely to have this specific type of codependency trauma response because they are the mother and father of the zodiac signs, the natural nurturers of the zodiac. Parentification is a form of invisible childhood trauma where there's a role reversal between the parent and the child. The child is forced to take on responsibilities within their families that are developmentally inappropriate, such as cooking, cleaning, caring for younger siblings, and attending to their parents' emotional and psychological needs instead of vice versa. Codependency is a complex psychological concept, typically characterized by unhealthy reliance on other people, emotionally, psychologically, or physically. Codependency involves a pattern of prioritizing others' needs over one's own needs to the point of neglecting self-care, boundaries, and personal well-being. And this pattern often stems from childhood experiences, such as growing up in an environment where love and validation were conditional, or where caregiving roles were imposed at a young age. That's that parentification, right? So Cancers are prone to codependency. Capricorns are also can be prone to codependency, but the Capricorn may not be as obvious because codependency comes in all of these different flavors, right? And we did a deep dive on that in the last astrology episode. So go back and re listen to that episode if you're really curious to learn more about codependency. So there's a bunch of different flavors or styles of codependency. Cancer energy tends to have these specific styles. Caretaker codependency, which is the type where individuals feel an overwhelming need to care for others, often at the expense of their own needs. And they have the subconscious belief that their value lies in being useful to others, which can lead to that toxic burnout and resentment, right? And then there's rescuer codependency. Rescuer codependents are drawn to people that they perceive as needing help or fixing. And this dynamic can create a cycle of dependency where the rescuer or fixer becomes validated by this feeling of being needed by their partner. But still, that resentment can build because their partner is then reliant on their support, right? And then there's martyr codependency, where the martyr sacrifices their needs and desires, often feeling unappreciated or taken advantage of. And then they may use their sacrifices as a way to guilt others into acting how they want them to act, right? So those three styles are kind of similar. So all three of those types struggle with difficulty maintaining and setting boundaries, a need for validation, a pattern of neglecting self care, or the codependent person abandoning themselves. And the childhood wound that this stems from is a deep seated fear of abandonment or fear of rejection. So the logic is if I become useful and indispensable to you, if you need me, then you won't abandon me. But this is not healthy because it's not interdependent. Interdependency is where both people in the relationship should be able to rely on each other and exchange that dependence rather than having the dynamic be really imbalanced toward one person. So, as with many of our behaviors, codependency is a self defense mechanism, and we can have so much compassion for that. Because as children, we learn how to get love from others, and sometimes the way we learn to do that is not effective once we become an adult. I never really saw the pattern of codependency in myself until I realized that codependency can look more active. So there's passive and active codependency. And as a general rule, passive codependents are more conflict avoidant. So in order to keep the peace, they neglect their own needs and desires or defer to decisions that are made by others. And they can even go as far as to lie or cover up or hide bad behavior in order to keep the peace among their relationship or their family members. And their lack of self love makes it difficult for them to set and maintain boundaries. So they just go along to get along. And this causes them to sacrifice their own interests and goals in order to try to make their partner happy. And that results in the resentment. I never realized this pattern within myself because I don't identify as being conflict avoidant. I identify as being very assertive. So active codependency is more of my style, the fixer style of codependency. While we often associate codependency with submission, an active codependent isn't afraid of conflict. They often cast themselves in the role of caretaker or savior and expect praise and validation in exchange for their sacrifice. In a darker scenario, an active codependent may even encourage or promote unhealthy behaviors in order to keep people reliant on them. They may feed a partner's addiction or undermine a partner's efforts to achieve independence. So I personally have not gone to that extent, but I very much resonate with the being a fixer and with addressing what I'm perceiving as an issue very head on within the relationship or with my partner. And it has resulted in me attempting to change my past partners, which is not healthy because when you're in a relationship, ideally you're in a relationship with someone that you don't feel like they need to change for you to like them. Ideally, you just already like them how they are in order to have a healthy relationship. But because of the way I grew up, I was constantly being somebody's therapist and being someone's emotional support system. So in my subconscious, in my psyche, I need other people around me to be okay. If somebody around me that I rely on emotionally is not okay emotionally themselves, I have a really strong compulsion to fix that and try to force them to just like feel better, feel mentally better, or feel better about themselves. Because in my mind, if they're not feeling okay, then I'm not feeling okay. Because if they're not taking care of themselves, how are they going to take care of me? So I end up taking care of them so that they will hopefully take care of me. But that always backfires because, yeah, why would they take care of themselves if I'm taking care of them for them? And then all of a sudden, I'm taking care of me and I'm taking care of them, and nobody's taking care of me except for me. So it still just results in me being drained. So basically, because I am assertive and I'm not afraid of conflict, I've never identified as being like a people pleaser, but it just presents itself in a different way. And I think that's why people pleasers have bothered me so much historically, and I've been triggered by them because I want them to stand up for themselves, because I want myself to stand up for myself and to take care of myself, if that makes sense. So you guys, this pattern hits really close to home for me. I myself am a Cancer. I was raised by a Cancer. I have known many Cancers in my life, and I feel like I can see the pattern from both sides, giving and receiving. And I've also spent years in therapy learning how to recognize this pattern in myself. And I'm talking about this again because I feel that it is very relevant to our healing and evolution in this time collectively. And then, of course, if you have Cancer or any of the water signs heavily in your chart, our energy is powerful, and it's important to be mindful with how we use that energy, because it can heal very dramatically or it can also harm very dramatically. So don't underestimate your personal power or the power of your emotions. In queer spirituality, the Cancer archetype and the act of self-mothering is sacred. Many queer folks had to self-parent early. Regardless of your gender identity, we each have an inner masculine and an inner feminine. And the inner feminine is the energy of the mother that nurtures us. Energy of the mother asks us, can we become our own safe place? Can you mother yourself with kindness instead of waiting for someone else to do it? And you may find that you are actually better at nurturing yourself than anyone else ever could be. If Cancer is your sun sign, your identity centers around emotional depth, protection, and the need to create emotional and physical safety for yourself and others. If Cancer is your moon sign, your inner world is highly sensitive and intuitive. You need a sense of emotional security to feel grounded. If Cancer is your rising sign, others experience you as being caring, gentle, receptive, and reserved, or even shy. If Cancer is your Venus sign, you need a close emotional connection and a deep sense of safety and emotional security in order to truly open up in relationships. And if Cancer is your Mars sign, you will excel in any of the caretaking professions, from teaching to nursing to hospice. And again, since Cancer rules the fourth house, home, land ownership, and family is going to be particularly important to anyone with a lot of Cancer energy in their chart. So reflect, you guys. Do you have any planets in Cancer? And which house does Cancer rule in your chart? These areas will be highlighted during Cancer season. That is June 21st to July 21st. And the upcoming Mercury retrograde in Cancer will be bringing lessons into these areas of your life throughout July into mid-August. So can you validate your own feelings without letting them dictate your every decision? And what would it look like to offer care to others without abandoning yourself? And practice establishing boundaries proactively to keep a healthy balance. Cancer teaches us that emotional expression and vulnerability is nourishment, not weakness. The ability to feel deeply without drowning or getting lost is true strength. Cancer teaches us that feeling deeply is strength as long as you don't abandon yourself in the process. This cardinal water Cancer season is punctuated by the cardinal earth sign of Capricorn, bringing a full moon on Monday, June 29th, the same day that Mercury goes retrograde in the sign of Cancer. This is not subtle energy, you guys. This is the emotional body meeting the mental body, our executive function. We could say it's the inner child meeting the inner CEO or the inner parent. Capricorn energy does not need praise. It does not need applause, but it tends to command respect. It's a cardinal earth sign ruled by the planet Saturn, which is the planet of responsibility, limitation, and long-term growth. This is the mountain goat archetype. Head down, one hoof at a time. The mountain goat climbs toward a goal in the distance at the top of the mountain. From a young age, Capricorn placements can internalize the belief that their worth equals their productivity. Success becomes proof of their value. And this is similar to the masculine wound that many men feel, but we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. Capricorns often get labeled workaholics, not because that they're obsessed with status, but because their achievement temporarily quiets their inner critic that's constantly saying they're not enough. Capricorn creates diamonds under pressure, as in it performs well, but sometimes forgets that pressure isn't the same thing as love. And in spirituality and queer life, this archetype hits deep because many queer folks learned early that survival requires excellence, that in order to be accepted, you must be impressive, be perfect. That was very much my path. Prove yourself, prove that you're worthy of love, that you're good enough. Capricorn understands that grind all too intimately. As the cardinal earth sign, Capricorn is similar to its cardinal water counterpart, Cancer, in that they both naturally take responsibility and take on emotional and physical labor, respectively, right? These two cardinal signs in particular are planners, protectors, and leaders. They're the parents of the zodiac. Capricorn feels stable when in position of authority and power. Power for Capricorn feels like safety. But here's the shadow. Self-sufficiency can become armor. Capricorn can really struggle to receive, just like Cancer. Rest can feel indulgent. Vulnerability can feel like too much of a risk, and relaxing can feel like weakness to a Capricorn. So this Capricorn full moon asks something radical. Can leadership success coexist with softness and self-care? Being ruled by Saturn, this full moon brings lessons, maturation, and long-term thinking. What structures are you building in your career or in your relationships? If Capricorn is your sun sign, your identity is shaped by ambition, responsibility, and the need to build something meaningful in the world. If Capricorn is your moon sign, your emotional security comes from achievement and being dependable. You feel safest when you're in control. If Capricorn is your rising sign, others experience you as composed, capable, and even authoritative, even if you're quietly carrying the world on your shoulders. So this full moon also brings in the opportunity for financial blessings and abundance with this full moon in Capricorn paired with Cancer Mercury Retrograde. We are also being offered an opportunity to reset something in terms of our career. Does our career trajectory and goals match up with our emotions and what we're passionate about? And a good way to gauge the answer to that question is your current job, whatever you're currently doing to make ends meet, would you do that for free? If your answer is no, what would you be willing to do for free? What do you enjoy doing? And you do it for free. That is what you're truly passionate about. So that's just a thought experiment, just a way to gauge where your passion is aligning with your practical reality. And if you'd like to journal a little bit more on this, write down one goal that you are climbing toward right now, whether that's career or otherwise. And then ask, if I didn't have to prove my worth, would I still want this? If I didn't have to do this just to make ends meet, would I still do this? And I recognize that not everybody has the ability to just switch jobs or switch careers, especially with the way the economy is right now. But even if we can just get clear on whether or not we are enjoying how we're spending our time, right? That can be career or personal time or otherwise, just getting clear on how we're actually spending our time and what we actually enjoy doing can help us rearrange our priorities and make time for more of what we actually enjoy doing, right? So I'm not saying quit the job that you have that you need to pay the bills. I'm saying become aware of how we're actually practically spending our emotional and physical energy. And can we reprioritize in order to align the physical with the emotional? That's what this elimination is about. That's what this Cancer Mercury retrograde is about. Remember, you guys, Capricorn energy isn't about grinding yourself into dust. That's a Capricorn's coping mechanism. And if we're using coping mechanisms, it's a sign that something in our nervous system, something in our body is telling us we need nurturing, we need attendance, right? So Capricorn energy is about building something enduring that lasts. All the earth signs remind us that true power is steady, embodied, and earned through integrity. When your words, your actions, your energy is aligning with your physical external reality, that's integrity, right? So climb the mountain. Just don't forget that you're allowed to rest on the way up. This full moon illuminates our relationships with ourselves and our sense of responsibility, ambition, accountability, authority to ourselves, so that inner masculine energy, and money and finances. Where are you building something meaningful? And where are you building something just out of obligation or just to prove something, to prove your worth? Capricorn energy wants to hear you're capable, you're dependable. But Cancer energy wants to know if leadership can also include softness. Can success include rest? It should, right? Can accountability coexist with compassion? It absolutely should. What structure in your life needs reinforcing and what could use dismantling? So let's talk about the Cancer Capricorn axis and what I actually mean when I say inner masculine and inner feminine energy. Because as I mentioned toward the start of this episode, something that strikes a chord with a lot of queer and trans people, which is understandable, is that this idea of masculine and feminine both inherently being inside of us, it feels like to some people that the gender binary is continuing to be enforced by spiritual practices. And I understand that perspective, but I'm also here to offer a different perspective. So in yoga philosophy, we focus on cultivating a conscious connection between our body, which represents feminine energy because it is a physical form closely related to the elements and Mother Earth, and then the mind, which in yoga philosophy is correlated with masculine energy, that energy of consciousness. So if we didn't want to use the terms masculine and feminine, we could use the terms consciousness and matter or form. And this would still be very accurate to yoga philosophy. So we focus on cultivating that conscious connection between the body, our form, and our mind or our consciousness, right? And our thinking mind, our conscious awareness is highly affected by both the state of the body and the state of the breath, which is our energy moving through. And we can think of our breath, of that energy, as a bridge between our physical body and our subtle body or our consciousness. So, in a way, there actually is kind of three different things: the body, the breath, and the mind or mental awareness, right? If we're thinking in terms of masculine and feminine, the body is considered feminine, the mind is considered masculine, and then our breath, chronic energy, or our life force energy, which is the breath, is that secret third thing, that, I guess, genderless thing, right? But yeah, I don't know why it has to be gendered at all. I think it's just a way to describe the two energies that a lot of people do relate to, because a lot of people do identify with one side of the binary. And so I think things have kind of been translated and explained using this terminology of masculine and feminine, or inner mother and inner father, in order to explain two types of energy that are universal energies in a way that the general population can conceptualize. Because we could use the Sanskrit term, we could use the yoga terms, right? Purush means consciousness and Prakriti means matter or form, but then everybody has to learn those two Sanskrit terms, right? And we don't always have time to explain those terms. So therefore, it's just easier to say masculine, feminine, or inner mother, inner father to describe these energies. In astrology, the Cancer Capricorn axis represents the sacred balance between Purush and Prakriti, inner masculine and inner feminine, whatever word we want to use for it. Western psychology also recognizes that we have an inner masculine and an inner feminine, or an inner mother and inner father archetype. This polarity shows up in the tension between feeling and functioning, nurturing and providing, softness and structure. So whatever words we want to put to it. right? Cancer is ruled by the moon, and again, represents the mother of the zodiac. So Cancer feels, nurtures, protects, and remembers. This cardinal water energy teaches us that emotional intelligence and care can be superpowers, but it can also overgive and over-identify with others' pain or seek worth through being needed. So at its highest vibration, Cancer creates safety, and in its lowest vibration, it can become emotionally overwhelmed or even controlling in its attempt to maintain security, which then creates a lack of safety, right? Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, is the father archetype because it structures, builds, and takes responsibility. And this cardinal earth energy asks grown-up questions. So what foundations are holding our life together? How are we practically supporting ourselves? And at its highest vibration, Capricorn is disciplined, reliable, and deeply capable. But in its lowest vibration, it can become rigid, emotionally distant, or driven by scarcity and the need to prove its worth. The Cancer Capricorn axis reveals how the inner balance or imbalance between our inner masculine and inner feminine, another term we could use is yin and yang energies, how this balance affects our relationships and really everything else in our life. Many LGBTQ plus people have had to self-parent, developing one archetype, either the inner father or inner mother, while neglecting the other in some cases. So, for example, you may know very well how to provide and care for others, but struggle with receiving. Or you may feel deeply and just kind of absorb and be very like receptive in general, but struggle with structure. So the integration of these two parts of ourselves is emotional sovereignty. And that's why it's so important. This is the medicine of this full moon. Can you validate your feelings without letting them run the entire show? And can you create that external and internal stability for yourself without suppressing your emotions? Can you mother yourself with compassion and also father yourself with accountability? Can you balance your inner masculine and feminine energies? This axis invites wholeness in order to create true safety. Cancer Capricorn reminds us that healing is not about choosing masculine or feminine, one or the other. It's about learning to embody both and become your own safe place, both emotionally, that's that Cancer energy, and structurally, that's that Capricorn energy. And I feel that gender nonconforming people can especially relate to this. And I'll speak for myself as a non-binary person. I relate to the idea of that secret third thing that we were talking about earlier. So it's not that I'm not feminine and it's not that I'm not masculine. I strongly feel like I am both, but I mostly identify as that secret third thing, which has no gender in it. It's gender neutral in the sense that it is both masculine and feminine. It has all the qualities and it's like in between those two. But there are other non-binary people who identify as agender, as in not identifying with gender at all, where I kind of identify with all the gender, and I'm also non-binary. So there's no right or wrong way. And so I am certainly not claiming to speak for all gender non-conforming people, but just to acknowledge, like, if you are transgender or gender nonconforming and this concept of inner masculine and feminine doesn't work for you, there are so many different words that you can use and swap out instead that might feel more accurate for you or more resonant for you. At the end of the day, it is all energy that everybody does have that we're working with. Just some of us may identify more with one or the other side of the binary, and then some of us might identify more with that secret third thing. And it's all equally valid, right? We're just using these words to describe energies, but at the same time, language is important, and it is always good to look into ways that we can use more and more inclusive and accurate language as best as we can. So as we approach this Capricorn full moon, are you stuck in your head or are you drowning in emotion? As always, remember the medicine is in the balance. Can you build that external stability while also expressing your emotions? Since we're at summer solstice, the light at its peak can reveal any imbalance clearly. And Litha is a potent time for setting goals and manifesting our intentions. So use any spiritual data that you've gathered around this time period wisely. And again, reflect, where is Cancer in your chart? Whereas Capricorn, which houses do those two rule, and which planets are being activated for you right now. When we recognize that the inner child and the inner CEO are both equally powerful and equally valid, that is where the true healing and integration begins. So to help you with this integration, we have a ritual challenge that is similar to last astrology episodes. So we'll be working with the inner child once again. The first step, which represents Cancer energy, is to write a letter to your inner child, or it can be any younger version of yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be when you were a child. And just tell that younger version of yourself what you understand now that you didn't back then. And then the next step to this ritual represents Capricorn energy, which is the inner CEO or the inner parent archetype, whichever word feels most accurate for you to use. So place your hand over your heart and read this letter out loud and take notes, highlight, come up with a practical action plan on how to actually integrate what is your younger version of yourself or your inner child telling you, and then what is your adult self telling your younger self. How can you integrate the emotion and the wisdom from these versions of yourself in order to create a more embodied, integrated, and whole approach to whatever your goals are? Holding space for both of these parts of ourselves is a potent opportunity to heal, integrate, and rewrite any old, outdated inner narratives that we may have. On a subconscious level, our inner child directs so many of our emotional responses, you guys. The process of writing this letter and then reading that letter back to a different part of ourselves is helping us understand where we come from, where we're going, and all of the things that we've learned along the way. So this is a wonderful way to work with self-reparenting. The inner father can be represented by the logical mind, and the inner mother represented by our emotions, by our heart, right? So take some time with that. And I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this episode and which energy do you resonate with? Mother, father, masculine, feminine, yin, yang, something totally different? Do you resonate with the secret third thing? Put it in the comments. I'd love to know. To summarize, in this episode, we explored the medicine of emotional sovereignty through the archetype of Cancer and unpacked the upcoming Mercury retrograde in Cancer, bringing us emotional clarity. We learned about the astrological symbolism of the Capricorn Full Moon's call towards sustainable, grounded, and practical power, and we integrated the Cancer Capricorn axis, balancing the inner mother and inner father within our own psyche. And we learned why these energies are present for everyone, regardless of your personal gender expression or gender identity. If you'd like to book a personal astrology reading with me and learn where your chart is being affected by this transit, you can do so on my website at youareloved.org/readings. And I'd be honored to dive into your chart with you and see how this full moon is going to affect you and how this Mercury retrograde and really the astrology of the rest of the year will be affecting you personally. Join our online community for just $11 per month to access exclusive new monthly content that is always based on the astrological season, plus over 10 hours of video workshops, including a deep dive into astrology, and meet like-minded queer folks who are also on a yogic path and a spiritual journey. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, let's stay connected and stay witchy. I'll talk to you soon, and blessed be. With all my love, Lee Davy.